I'm gonna be honest with y'all. We might have to get Sydney Colson up out of here. In terms of her being on the Indiana Fever, it might be time for her to go, bro. I'm gonna keep it real. Like she's kind of hanging on by a thread. Like she's a fringe WNBA player at this point anyway, coming off a major injury. I'm over the Sydney Colson thing. I'm gonna keep it all the way real with y'all.
That's Sydney Colson, and what you just heard is a player who's been in the WNBA for over a decade, essentially admitting she's on borrowed time, hanging by a thread, coming off a major injury, a fringe player at this point in her career, and yet somehow she's become one of the loudest voices in the most contentious CBA negotiation in WNBA history. So we need to ask the obvious question: why is someone who might not even be in the league next season trying to blow up a deal that could delay or cancel the 2025 season?
We're in right now with so many things that are up in the air.
You know, I'm a person, I've lived my life on just like faith and trusting that what's meant for me is gonna happen. I don't have a reporter asked me not long ago, like, you know, are you stressed? What's your level of stress regarding the CBA? And I'm like, look, I've been hanging on by a thread in the W for years now. I thought it was over after the pandemic, you know, after the bubble season.
I've been hanging on by a thread in the W for years now. Those are her words, not mine. She thought her career was over after the 2020 bubble season. That was 5 years ago. And here's what makes this significant. The current CBA negotiation isn't about players like Sydney Colson. She's a veteran role player who's already collected her checks, already won her championship with the Las Vegas Aces in 2023. The new deal is supposed to protect the middle tier and the rookies. But when you listen to her rhetoric, when you watch her at Athletes Unlimited talking to younger players, there's a different agenda at play. The WNBA Players Association rejected the league's initial offer in January 2025. That offer included significant increases, raising the average salary from approximately $120,000 to over $200,000, boosting the rookie minimum from $64,000 to $100,000, and introducing revenue sharing for the first time in league history. The league was offering to more than double the salary cap over the life of the agreement, and players like Colson are telling younger players to pump the brakes.
I think you can't fault people, and I think that if our league didn't look the way we did, a lot of things, like a lot wouldn't be said about us fighting for what we feel we deserve. But I think a lot of people...
Wait a minute, hold on. Let me rewind that a little bit. What'd she say?
But I think you can't fault people, and I think that if our league didn't look the way we did, a lot of things, like a lot wouldn't be said about us fighting for what we feel we deserve. But I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to women, people just don't think that we should be saying that we deserve something.
People just don't think that we should be saying that we deserve something. There it is, the gender card. The fallback position that shuts down any legitimate business analysis. And this is where the conversation gets deliberately derailed every single time. Nobody is saying women don't deserve equal pay for equal work. Nobody is arguing that WNBA players shouldn't be compensated fairly. What people are saying, what the financial reality shows, is that you can't demand NBA-level compensation when the league has operated at a loss for 27 consecutive years. Let's put some actual numbers to this. The WNBA was subsidized by the NBA to the tune of approximately $10 to $12 million per year from its founding in 1996 through 2018. That's over $200 million in cumulative losses. In 2022, the league reported its first-ever profit, but that was largely attributed to increased investment and the new media rights deal. Then 2023 saw modest gains, but here's the critical context. The explosion in ratings and revenue didn't happen until Caitlin Clark entered the league in 2024. According to Sports Media Watch, WNBA regular season viewership in 2024 increased 170% compared to 2023. Games featuring Caitlin Clark averaged 1.8 million viewers on major networks. The playoff finals between the New York Liberty and Minnesota Lynx averaged 1.6 million viewers across the series, peaking at 2.15 million for the decisive Game 5. That's unprecedented growth. But it's also brand new. The financial windfall from that growth hasn't been realized yet. The league is negotiating based on projected future revenue, not established profit margins.
And so I want to see our young players in this league, the people who've been around, and
y'all don't want to see nothing for them young players. Y'all not worried about them young players. You, Nneka Ogwumike, none of y'all gonna be around for the next CBA. Y'all trying to get every little penny that y'all can. Y'all trying to get every dollar y'all can right now. Because when the next CBA happens and they really get paid again, y'all ain't going to be around for it. Stop the lying, man.
Help get the league to where it is. People want to feel that they are receiving something for that. And if they don't, at least the people after me will.
Who helped the... Y'all didn't start doing numbers like this till 2024 when Caitlyn got here, bro. We all know that. And I'm not saying y'all can't ball. It's some certified ballers in this league that I enjoy watching. But just stop.
Y'all not worried about them young players. Y'all trying to get every dollar y'all can right now because when the next CBA happens and they really get paid, y'all ain't going to be around for it. Now that's the most honest assessment we've heard in this entire negotiation. Because that's exactly what's happening here. Veterans like Sydney Colson, players who are 34, 35, 36 years old, players who've already acknowledged they're barely hanging on, they know this is their last chance to maximize earnings. The next CBA negotiation will happen in 2032 or 2033. None of these veterans will be active players by then, so when Colson and Nneka Ogwumike and Jewel Lloyd are pushing younger players to hold firm, to reject deals, to consider striking, they're not doing it for the benefit of rookies who'll be in the league for the next decade. They're doing it because this is their final opportunity to cash in on the Caitlin Clark effect. And that's not necessarily wrong from an individual perspective, but let's call it what it is. This isn't about principle. This isn't about fighting for future generations. This is about veteran players trying to secure their retirement before the window closes. The last CBA, signed in 2020, increased the maximum salary to $228,094 and created a more equitable pay structure. But it also resulted in roster casualties. Teams had to cut veteran players because the salary cap couldn't accommodate both the increased rookie salaries and the veteran contracts. Players like Colson saw teammates lose their jobs because of the math. And now they're advocating for an even more aggressive push that could create the same problem, except this time with even higher stakes, because the league can't afford another work stoppage in the middle of its first genuine growth period.
Them this time.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. I mean, I'll share just overall. I think the energy in the room was just for the vets who've been around, who were role players, some who were impacted by the last CBA in a major way, or had teammates who were impacted because we took care of the highest paid players and we took care of the rookies, but a lot of middle people who should have still had a job got pushed out because of the difference of a few $1,000s and some other things.
I don't know, man. I saw Katie Lou Samuelson getting a max contract and she can't play. I'm just keeping it real. I saw Katie Lou Samuelson collecting checks and she can't play. She can't play no more.
But we just wanted to inform the younger players so that they knew exactly what was going on. Because I remember being a younger player and just being happy to be in the league and not understanding everything, or not even not understanding, mostly just not having a real interest to learn more because, look, I'm lucky to still even be here. So I'm not really trying to rock the...
Athletes Unlimited. That's where this gets interesting. For those who don't follow alternative basketball leagues, Athletes Unlimited is a women's basketball league that operates during the WNBA offseason. It pays well, offers equity to players, and provides an alternative revenue stream. Several WNBA players, including Sydney Colson, participate. And in February 2025, Nneka Ogwumike and Jewel Lloyd, both WNBA Players Association executives, held a meeting at Athletes Unlimited to discuss the CBA negotiations with younger players. The stated purpose was education, making sure younger players understood the terms, the implications, the history of previous negotiations, and on the surface, that sounds reasonable. But here's what Colson just revealed. The actual energy in that room was about informing younger players so they wouldn't just accept a deal out of gratitude for being in the league. The subtext was clear. Don't be satisfied with what's being offered. Don't just sign because you're happy to be here. Push for more. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with veteran players mentoring rookies about business, but when you're a player who just admitted you thought your career was over 5 years ago, when you're someone who's acknowledged you're barely hanging on, when you're in the twilight of your career and you're telling 22-year-old rookies to risk a work stoppage, you need to be honest about whose interests you're actually representing. Because a player who's 35 years old and might not get another contract regardless of the CBA outcome has very different incentives than a player who's 23 and has a decade-plus career ahead of them. The 2020 CBA negotiations happened during COVID, the league was shut down. The bubble season in Bradenton, Florida was a logistical nightmare. Players had legitimate concerns about health, safety, and financial security during a pandemic, and they still got a deal done that included significant raises. But that negotiation happened when the league had no leverage and no momentum. This negotiation is happening when the WNBA has more visibility, more revenue, and more mainstream attention than at any point in its history. And some players want to risk all of that momentum for what amounts to a few extra percentage points.
Helpful.
I love that you're able to do that for some of the younger players because there's a lot of legalese. Like there's a lot of intricacies into the CBA negotiations that are probably really overwhelming when it involves your money, your compensation, your career, your life for the foreseeable future. But from somebody that has been in this league for a long time and has played a lot of basketball, seen the growth of the league, what's the most important thing in the CBA right now? Is it getting it done and making sure that we have a season, or making sure that the deal is right regardless of missing?
Making sure that the deal is right. Willing to give as little as possible to the workers. That's how I make a profit. And there it is, the fundamental misunderstanding of how business actually works. Or maybe it's not a misunderstanding. Maybe it's a deliberate framing designed to paint the owners as greedy villains who are exploiting workers. Let's talk about WNBA ownership. The league has 12 teams. Most are owned by individuals or ownership groups who also own NBA franchises. The Connecticut Sun are owned by the Mohegan Tribe. The Las Vegas Aces are owned by Mark Davis, who also owns the NFL's Las Vegas Raiders. The New York Liberty are owned by Joe Tsai, who bought the team for $10 million in 2019 and has invested over $80 million in the franchise since then, including building a state-of-the-art practice facility. These owners have subsidized losses for decades, not because they're running charities, but because they believed in the long-term potential of women's basketball. They kept the league alive through years, when attendance was abysmal, when television ratings were non-existent, when the financial case for the WNBA's existence was purely speculative. And now that the league is finally showing signs of profitability, largely because of one player who entered the league in 2024, some players are acting like the owners owe them retroactive compensation for all those years of losses. That's not how business works. You don't get paid based on potential future earnings. You get paid based on current revenue and demonstrated value. And the current revenue, as impressive as the 2024 growth was, is still a fraction of what players are demanding. The WNBA's new media rights deal with Disney, Amazon Prime, and NBC is worth $200 million per year over 11 years, starting in 2026. That's a massive increase from the previous deal, which was worth about $50 million per year. But even with that increase, the league's total revenue is projected to be around $300 to $350 million annually, once all revenue streams are included. Compare that to the NBA, which generates over $10 billion in annual revenue. The NBA pays its players 50% of basketball-related income. If the WNBA adopted the same model with $300 million in revenue, that's $150 million total for player salaries across 12 teams with 144 roster spots. That works out to just over $1 million per player on average. Except the distribution wouldn't be average. Stars would make $3 to $4 million. Role players would make $200,000 to $400,000. And fringe players like Sydney Colson wouldn't make the roster at all, because teams couldn't afford to carry 12 players.
Games or not.
Yeah, I think making sure that the deal is right, that, like, I think when it's all said and done, one side might feel like they got a little less than they bargained for, maybe, but like maybe nobody's going to be fully happy, but it'll be like, all right, but this is respectable enough. Like, this is good enough. They're willing to give this. Because at the end of the day, business, no matter what it is, WNBA or not, every business is going to try to give as little as possible to the workers. That's how
Every business is going to try to give as little as possible to the workers. That's how I make a profit. Except WNBA owners haven't made a profit. That's the part that keeps getting ignored in this conversation. For 27 years, owning a WNBA team was a guaranteed money-losing proposition. You bought a franchise knowing you'd subsidize it indefinitely. You built practice facilities, paid staff salaries, covered travel costs, and ate losses every single season. And you did it because you believed that eventually, the investment would pay off. And now it might actually pay off. The 2024 season showed that with the right star power, with the right marketing, with the right media coverage, the WNBA can draw mainstream attention. Caitlin Clark's impact was undeniable. Indiana Fever games became must-watch television. Her rivalry with Angel Reese drove storylines all season. The playoff ratings were legitimately impressive, For the first time in league history, the WNBA felt like it was breaking through to casual sports fans, not just die-hard women's basketball supporters. But here's the risk that players like Sydney Colson don't seem to be considering. That momentum is fragile. A work stoppage in 2025 would be catastrophic. Casual fans who just discovered the league in 2024 aren't going to wait around through a labor dispute. They'll move on to the next thing. The media attention will evaporate, and all the goodwill built up over the past year will disappear. You don't get a second chance at a first impression with mainstream America. The WNBA has spent 28 years trying to break through. It finally did. And now some players want to risk it all over what amounts to the difference between a good deal and a great deal.
We got Sydney Colson addressing the CBA and basically kind of like urging a strike. Like, yeah, don't sign that. Don't just sign. Let's just make sure that younger players know and this and that. Like, bro, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? This is crazy, man. These chicks in this WNBA CBA, man, and then they make it like, oh, y'all just don't want to see women get paid. No, we cool with seeing women get paid. Y'all just aren't crediting the person that's responsible for y'all trying to.
Let's go back to where this started. Sydney Colson on the Indiana Fever. That's what the original comment was about before the video pivoted to CBA discussion. Colson is currently with the Las Vegas Aces, where she won a championship in 2023. But there's been speculation about her moving to Indiana, possibly to be a veteran presence for Caitlin Clark. And the reaction in that opening clip was dismissive. We might have to get Sydney Colson a body. She's a fringe WNBA player at this point anyway, coming off a major injury. That's harsh, but it's also accurate. Colson is 35 years old. She averaged 2.3 points and 1.1 assists in 10.7 minutes per game during the 2024 season. Those are end-of-bench numbers. She's a locker room presence, a veteran leader, someone who knows how to win. But she's not a rotation player on a contending team anymore. And that context matters when evaluating her role in the CBA negotiations. Because here's what's really happening. Players who are on the roster bubble, players who might not have a job next season regardless of the CBA terms, have the least to lose from a work stoppage. If you're Caitlin Clark, or Aja Wilson, or Brianna Stewart, a lost season costs you millions in salary and endorsements. If you're Sydney Colson, a lost season might just mean your retirement comes a year earlier than planned. The incentive structures are completely different. And that's why the WNBA Players Association's negotiating strategy is so risky. The players with the most leverage, the stars who drive revenue, are being advised by veterans who have the least to lose. It's a recipe for overplaying your hand. The league has already offered substantial increases. Revenue sharing is on the table. The salary cap is doubling. These are real significant improvements that would materially benefit every player in the league. But instead of securing those gains and building on them in the next negotiation, some players are pushing for everything right now. Here's what makes this particularly frustrating for fans who actually want to see the WNBA succeed. The league is finally in a position where sustainable growth is possible. The 2024 season proved there's an audience. The media rights deal proved there's institutional support. Expansion teams are being added in San Francisco and Toronto, with more cities expressing interest. Corporate sponsors are investing. This is the moment the WNBA has been working toward for 3 decades, and the players are threatening to derail it over the difference between a $200,000 average salary and a $250,000 average salary. So let's synthesize what's actually happening here, because the narrative around this CBA negotiation has been deliberately muddied by people who benefit from confusion. The WNBA is offering its players the best deal in league history. Not just incrementally better, but dramatically better. The salary cap is more than doubling. Revenue sharing is being introduced for the first time, which means players will directly benefit from the league's growth. Rookie salaries are increasing by over 50%. The minimum salary for veterans is jumping significantly. These are real tangible improvements that would make every player in the league substantially wealthier. But it's not enough for some players. And the reason it's not enough has nothing to do with fairness or equity or gender discrimination. It has to do with the fact that veteran players who are nearing the end of their careers want to maximize their earnings right now, and they're willing to risk the league's momentum to do it. They're framing this as a fight for respect, as a battle against owners who don't value women's labor, as a principled stand for future generations. But strip away the rhetoric, and what you're left with is a straightforward labor negotiation where one side is overestimating its leverage. The WNBA Players Association seems to believe that the league can't afford a work stoppage because the momentum from 2024 is too valuable to risk, and they're right about that. A canceled or delayed 2025 season would be disastrous for the league's growth trajectory. But what they're not considering is that a work stoppage would be equally disastrous for the players. Maybe more so, because the owners can absorb another year of losses if they have to. They've been absorbing losses for 3 decades, but the players can't absorb a year without paychecks. And more importantly, they can